And we are back with another edition of How About Them Celtics, talking C's with Bobby Kravitsky of SI Media Group. Bobby, how are you doing today?
Doing fantastic. Excited for the NBA's most iconic rivalry and one of the most legendary rivalries in all of sports, Lakers-Celtics, round 2 tonight after the Christmas clash. And so that's one where, as much dysfunction as there is surrounding the purple and gold right now, this rivalry tends to deliver. So throw the records out the window.
It is, in fact, a big-time game. Unfortunate and ironic that Sam isn't here because he's actually traveling to LA right now, so he can't be with us. So that is quite the funny reason for him not to be here. And sorry to the commenters, Bobby. There's a whole war in the comments saying I like Sam better, I like Jack better for the past on one of our recent videos. It was very weird. So shout out to the Jack stands, I suppose.
Obviously, the Sam stands are bots.
We'll see. We'll see if any of them actually tune into this video. Maybe they only come by when Sam's here. But regardless,
poach some of them.
I know. I got to sway them. I got to bring them over. But let's start. Before we get to the Lakers game, let's double back a little bit. Talk about the Pacers win. Celtics held on against Indiana this past Tuesday, despite a late surge from the Pacers, where they even got a lead in the third quarter after the Celtics were up by as much as 20 in the second. But again, Celtics held on in spite of some of the worst rebounding I've seen in a long time. Joe Mazzulla, Kristaps Porzingis all talked about it after the game, said, some of them were effort plays, but some of them were just the Pacers crashed the glass really hard. What's your take from that game? To be honest, we did an entire 20-minute post game, our recap, and 15 of it was just they couldn't rebound the ball. I don't know. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, so I thought it was fascinating, and you knew the dynamic. Speak to Mazzulla about it after seeing it unfold, and he felt like so what I asked him was about the very simple structure of what it's like to play the Pacers, where, if you'll allow me to, I know it's a terrible analogy, but in high school, I used to play a friend of mine who I was on the basketball team with. We would go full court one-on-one. And what that means is that you can get a layup anytime you want. But now you have to run back and play catch up and defend. And at an exponentially higher level, that's what it's like to play the Pacers. They give up the most points in the paint. You can get to the rim, which the Celtics did, but they are a high octane, up-tempo offense that then plays a motion offense. So they're constantly moving. You never get to catch your breath. So you can go all the way to the basket if you want. You're going to get there. You're probably going to score once you arrive. But now you got to get back. And then you've got to constantly be moving around and head on a swivel because they back cut and they back screen and all these different things. So I talked to Joe Mazzulla about the balance of that between knowing that you can get into the paint at will against them versus then what it means at the other end. And so he just talked about that dribble drive attack and how constantly, once you're off the body, they're gone. And so he felt like he wanted to watch it back, but he didn't think the rebounding by and large was about a lack of effort on the Celtics' part. And Jaylen Brown and Kristaps Porzingis and Jrue Holiday, they all echoed that sentiment. And I think they're right. It's just exhausting. And Porzingis talked about how, hey, it can kill the crowd and it makes you look bad when you play them because of the nature of their attack. So credit to Rick Carlisle, and then to have an engine like Tyrese Halliburton running it. I think Siakam fits it perfectly. And so what you saw was a Celtics offense that went cold in the second half, and ultimately that allows the Pacers to dig out of what was once a 20-point deficit. And I know I'm being long-winded here, Jack, but what I loved the most was that on a night where it was all about offense, it was the Celtics defense that closed it out for them.
Yeah, the defensive possessions at the end of the game were impressive. I think the Pacers only scored 21 points in a quarter. I don't know what their lowest mark in a quarter is this season. I'm going to look it up right now. But that feels like it's got to be up there considering how elite of an offense they run. Pacers fewest points in a quarter this season. Sorry, I'm terrible at multitasking, so I filibuster by reading what I'm typing. Yeah, it's up there. It's definitely up there. Their two lowest quarters actually came when they played the Celtics on the 6th of January and November 1st. However, the 21-point quarter from the 30th is tied for the 5th lowest quarter the Pacers have scored in a game this season, and the Celtics needed that with how much the Pacers were killing them on the offensive glass, and with the offense, the motion offense you mentioned, which does allow them to get on the glass. And it's not like it was any one guy. Like, it's not like, Kevon Looney who is killing them. It is every single player on the roster outside of Andrew Nembhard or outside of Ben Shepherd, sorry, I believe, had an offensive rebound tonight. They were just, it was by committee, and it was really hurting the Celtics. And the fact that they still managed to win that game when they took 21 fewer shots than the Pacers is insane that they won that game. So credit to the Celtics for pulling it out. And I viewed that more of a as a, what's the word, as a blip on the radar rather than a trend, because they've been much better on the glass this season. So credit to them from that perspective. Let's go game to game here, and then we can jump to the rest of the topics we have. Lakers play tonight as we're recording this, and I guess as you're listening to this too, because this will go up later this evening. Second time they've played the Lakers this season. Celtics handled them on Christmas pretty handily. There was a little moment, I think, in the first half, third quarter, where the Lakers were like, "Oh, we're here," and the Celtics were like, "Nope, you're not," and said, "See you later." But first time Lakers are in town today. Sam was very happy. I saw him tweet out that they are wearing the home whites, so they are back to that trend. Lakers are wearing their Black City Edition jerseys, so they are maybe not taking it as seriously, according to him. But what are you looking for in this Lakers game?
Well, so if I could just make one final point on that Pacers game,
Please.
It's something you saw there where the game-winning basket from the Celtics, it was Kristaps Porzingis on a sideline inbound off a great screen from Jaylen Brown. I believe it was Jaylen, and it forces a switch. So now Nesmith is on Porzingis, and Pascal Siakam did a good job to come down and help to give Nesmith time to square up and recover. But it doesn't matter with that height difference. And Porzingis just easily turns and scores right over him. That is a prime example in a clutch moment of an option the Celtics couldn't go to a season ago. It's the main reason he's here, is to be able to punish switches for everything that he provides, for how he's helped Jaylen Brown as a facilitator, for him being more dynamic defensively than I think he got credit for prior to arriving in Boston. That ability is a weapon that the Celtics have not been able to complement Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown with. And you saw on Tuesday a glimpse of what they're hoping and expecting to get out of Porzingis in the playoffs.
Absolutely. I mean, Sam says it all the time. I'll credit to him. I've said his name far too many times in the past 2 minutes, but it's fine.
You're not helping your cause here.
We love Sam. We love Sam. He says it all the time. He goes, Porzingis is, or Tatum's the best player. Jaylen Brown is the second best player. D White is blah, blah, blah. But he goes, Kristaps is the most important player to having how this team runs. I think you saw that, especially in the Clippers game, where they were completely lost on offense without him. And you see that when they can run all these different, he's like a release valve. I've said that a lot the past couple weeks, but it's true. He's just a constant guy that they can go to. It's like, all right, possession's not going well. Kristaps, you're 7-3. You can help us figure it out. And that's why they got him. And he's been the perfect fit, and he was always going to be the perfect fit. And it's, sucks that they had to trade Marcus for him, but like that trade is going to go down as one of the best in recent memory, just because of how great he's been. But like I said, hopefully Kristaps can continue that against the Lakers. We'll transition there a little bit. LeBron, AD coming to town. I don't actually know. I'm going to check the injury report just in case I'm wrong. But
still expect them to play. It's just tradition that they're on the injury report listed as questionable.
There's no way Davis and LeBron don't play in this game. I'll put it that way. The real question is, will the Celtics star Luke Cornett make it to the court in time? And so that's what I'll be looking for. But what are you looking for in this game?
Well, obviously that's the story. Does Luke Cornett give it a go tonight? And as far as the matchup itself, I mean, this is another chance for the Celtics to go up against a very physical defense with size. And so that's a challenge that you always just kind of put in the notebook of, okay, how'd they fare on this front, especially when it comes to fighting for position, whether that's to set a screen, looking at you, Kristaps Porzingis, whether that's being able to just cut and move off the ball to create. So we'll see what happens there. And then there's just general stuff that you have to monitor with this team every single night. Pace is so crucial to their success on a per possession basis that, hey, against the Lakers, don't let them slow it down and control the tempo to your detriment. Be able to push it, including off of makes, and be able to get yourself in these favorable setups that will also make it that much easier to deal with their physicality.
Yeah, I mean, the Lakers are a big team. I mean, that's what you've seen from them, even in that Christmas game. Or sorry, I'm thinking of the in-season tournament game as my example, right? When they beat the Pacers. Sam and I had a long conversation about it, and he said something along the lines of, the Pacers or the Celtics should play offense more like the Lakers did in that game. And my counterpoint to him was, The only reason the Lakers offense looked good in that game is because they can only score in the paint, and the Pacers only let people score in the paint. Like the Lakers can't shoot. They're a terrible offensive team. But the reason that they had success in that game is just what you said. They're big, like they're physical. That's what they do. They play defense and they get inside, and that's what they do best. And this Celtics team defensively has guys who can counter that. You have Drew Holiday who can get in your face and sort of muck you up a little bit. You have Al Horford off the bench who can, stand up Anthony Davis and play some defense down there. You got Kristaps, you got helpers and Tatum and Brown, and you got Derek White, who will probably be guarding Austin Reeves if I had to guess anything, or D'Lo, one of the guards. Like, this is a good defensive team. And then the Lakers can't shoot like the off. Like that's what it is, and there's nothing that's going to fix it. When Taurean Prince is your best shooter, you're probably not going to be a very good team. And Taurean Prince is good; he's been really good this year. But like, it's just not going to happen. If I'm the Celtics, like, do you think AD will guard Porzingis? That's probably the assumption, right? If Porzingis plays, AD will guard Porzingis, and if that's the case,
so I think it'll be a combination. I think you'll see plenty of AD on Porzingis. I also think they'll want Rui on him at times and allow Anthony Davis to play free safety in a Robert Williams type of role, protecting the rim.
Well, in that case, if I'm the Celtics, all I do is whoever Anthony Davis is guarding, constantly that guy is spacing the floor, because the benefit of the Celtics offense is everyone can shoot. Like, every coach that has come to TD Garden has said that this year. Like, yeah, they can all shoot. Like, they can all shoot. What are you gonna do? You have to account for that. So whoever is on AD, sit on the 3-point line, and then once you drive, kick it to that guy. Like, the Lakers don't have the personnel to make up for that like the Celtics do. Like, they have weak spots. There are very few teams in the league who have good defenders across the board. Like, I'm thinking like the Thunder. I have pretty good defenders across the board, so they can keep up. There's not many. Like, I'm trying to think through them. Like, there's not many teams.
There's
and
usually
Lakers,
a mismatch to hunt.
Exactly. Look at Austin Reeves. Look at D'Lo.
The Timberwolves,
like, those guys
pretty
are good,
but even them, if you can get Gobert on the perimeter, Towns on the perimeter is a problem.
You'll find something. I was about to say Miami, but then like Tyler Hero, they cooked him last time.
And Rozier.
Exactly. Haywood Highsmith got like cooked by Tatum too, and he's a fine defender. So, like, it feels like the Celtics have such a good roster for breaking down teams that are even the best at what they do. And this Lakers team's a really good defensive team, but when the Celtics have weapons at all 5 positions, it's going to be really tough to contest that. So, I don't know. It feels like this could be a big mismatch hunting game for the Celtics, because this Lakers do have such elite defenders at some positions, but then other ones, it's like, if Austin Reeves ends up on Jayson Tatum, they're cooked, right? Like, you're just done for that possession. So,
yeah, there's
see what happens.
Absolutely on that front. And then the key is make sure that you're hunting the right mismatch in the moment, because it can be the correct choice, but not play out in your favor. And you've got to pull out of that quickly enough that you're not allowing the other team to go on a run. Also, and I want to talk to Joe Mazzulla about this before the game, is that when they played on Christmas, and we actually talked about this on this show with Sam, is that Jayson Tatum, he's unveiling his second edition of his signature sneaker. It's the NBA's marquee date on the regular season calendar. It's the most iconic rivalry in the league. He wanted to show up and show out that day. And instead, the Lakers said, we're taking you away, specifically Jayson Tatum. We're not taking the Jays away. We're taking Jayson Tatum out of the picture. And the whole game, he was cool with it. He led them in screens, in points created off his picks. He facilitated and ran the offense that way and let everyone else step into the spotlight as scorers happily. And his team got the win pretty comfortably for it. So I'm curious to see if the Lakers, they stick to that structure and try to make tweaks within it, or if they abandon that approach.
You see, I have my little notebook that I write in during every game. I've been trying to track it all year. There's no good stat to find anywhere outside of like maybe if you buy Second Spectrum or something. Tatum has been such a good screener this year. Like, he has been so elite in that role. Mazzulla's talked about it, how like you can be effective when the ball's not in your hand. He has been screening off ball. He does this pin down screen to get whoever's in the corner an open look. Like, he'll drive and then set the screen, so he draws his defender because he's so elite rolling to the rim, but then he draws 2 because he's been so good off the ball setting screens for other guys. He does a little action in the middle of the floor where he screens for Pritchard, then Cornette, and then Cornette screens for him, and he ends up at the paint, and then Cornette. Like, they're doing all these little things using Jayson Tatum because his gravity is so big, and so having him as that screener is so effective. And it's been such a underrated unappreciated niche to this Celtics offense. And I'm glad you brought it up. And I want to write about it, but I can't. Like, there's no order for me to find the stats, so it's a struggle for me.
So I'll say this, because I wrote about it a lot after that Lakers Christmas clash, is that the easiest to do is to get the NBA.com data on his screen assists, his screen points, all of that, right? I don't think there's a way to get a metric for what are the quality of his screens outside of that. That just requires looking at the film.
Yeah, the off-ball ones are tough to gauge, and I think that's where he's been most effective. Anyways, we have a few hit points. That's not the right one. You know what I'm saying. A few quick hitters is what I'm saying.
Quick hitters, that works?
Yeah, exactly. Probably the biggest of the bunch, which we can spend some time on. Mazzulla has talked a lot about entitlement this year. I recently wrote an article for Celtics blog, effectively called the Mazzulla mentality, where I broke down, shout out Bill Sy of Celtics blog, who helped me with the phrasing and the mindset and the flow of it. How the Celtics have effectively taken on the personality of each of their head coaches. They were overachievers under Brad Stevens. They learned toughness under Udoka. Now that they're ready to win a title, they need the mindset. That is all Mazzulla preaches. He's preached it all season. He's preached, process over results. He's preached day to day. Don't think about this game. Don't get too high after a win. Don't get too down after a loss. He's preached, I want us to be down so we can come back. I want us to have these learning experiences. I want us to grow from this. Like, all of these mindset driven things for a team that is clearly talented enough to win a championship, clearly talented enough to go on this deep postseason run. What do they need most right now? They need a guy who is going to make sure they are in the right headspace to get there. And we've talked about it on this show before, how Mazzulla is the perfect head coach for this team. This is why.
Yeah, 100%. And Kristaps Porzingis spoke about it after the game against the Pacers, that Joe Mazzulla is someone who likes to play chess, and he does jujitsu and all these different ways to challenge himself mentally. And then he does that to the team, and that it's really good for their growth and their focus. You mentioned that win the day mantra that they've taken on this season. So I think Joe Mazzulla, even when he was an assistant coach here, that he was able to see what this team needs to constantly have reinforced to them from in terms of between the ears, and has really hit on all the ones that you touched on there. And the entitlement part, this is a very impressive group in terms of their maturity and what they have from the shoulders up. So I think the entitlement is more that this is an organization that cares a great deal about who their fan base is, their knowledge of what they're watching and what they're talking about. And he really wants to drive out. Yes, he doesn't want it in his locker room, but I think that's not really, I don't want to say a concern's not the right word, but it's just not an issue, quite frankly, for the Celtics internally, by and large. I think that's more a message when he talks about entitlement specifically to the fan base of, hey, you're not going to show up and because you're the Celtics, win every game, win every quarter, that when you're up by 20 in today's NBA, it doesn't mean you're going to win by 40, that there will probably be a comeback from the opposition and you're going to have to fight through it. And so I think that is an important message, and it speaks to how Joe Mazzulla has his finger on the pulse of his locker room, but also the fan base, and knowing what messages to get out to them.
I think this has been Mazzulla's approach the entire time, but he wasn't as good at conveying it last year. Like, you saw the road map that he laid out. Like, him not calling timeouts last year and letting them figure it out is the equivalent of, I want us to be down in games so we can't have those lessons. He didn't like communicate that idea as well. Last year, he was like, what do you tell him after this? He goes, I just tell him I love him and we move on. He didn't communicate that well enough. That is the same as don't get too high after a loss. Don't get too low after or high after a win, low after a loss, like day to day. He had these same exact ideas. He just wasn't as good at communicating them because he wasn't ready to be head coach. Like, he wasn't used to that. Like, that's not his mentality. He talked about it before the season. He goes, I brought it up a million times on the show, but he's like, I used to take the service elevator because I didn't want to to talk to people when I was an assistant coach. Like, he wasn't used to that back and forth with media and explaining it to them. And now this year you have him picking on Gary every presser, mocking Bobby Manning for wearing a tie, and like opening up his personality. And he's joking with the reporters and all this stuff. But every time he talks about the team, it is stone faced, steady. We are here. We're ready to go. Same mentality the entire season. Kristaps Porzingis, right? Let me read you 2 quotes. I did this on the last pod, but I think it's a perfect example of the consistent mindset Mazzulla has brought to the team this year. So the first Porzingis quote, we all understand what our goal is, but we don't want to have that, only have that in our minds. As coach said, we have to live the lifestyle. We have to live the day-to-day. We have to put in the work. And then in the end, if we put in the work, we'll achieve the results. But it has to be a daily focus, not always keeping in mind the big goal. But we're keeping that in mind always. But we are keeping that in mind. Then Porzingis, like you mentioned, he also said, Joe's very smart, mindset driven. He knows how important mindset and mentality is. That's just who he is. Jiu-jitsu, chess, always trying to evolve as a coach. He transmits that to us. He's a young coach, but I think he's very smart. That first quote was October 3rd. The second one was 2 nights ago. Like, this has been a year-long process with Joe Mazzulla. And that is exactly what this team needs. They have the talent. They have the experience. They need the correct mentality. And that's exactly what Joe Mazzulla brings to the table.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it starts with last year. I was writing about this at the beginning of the season because you could see it coming. They were looking ahead to the playoffs. They weren't all in on the day-to-day. And so I was saying, I remember in particular writing after an early season loss in Cleveland, where the second half just went very poorly for them. I believe it was the game where Jayson Tatum forced overtime on the last play of regulation. They ran that classic, have him beyond half court, sprint down, dime from Marcus Smart, and I think he dunked on Jared Allen. No foul called. They go to overtime. I believe it was that matchup. But what you could see in the second half of that game was that this is a team that is just begging to get burned in the playoffs for constantly looking ahead and not being where their toes are. And that has changed. They've done a 180 on that front this season. And I think that starts with the head coach having his finger on the pulse of the team. And Joe Mazzulla is saying, it doesn't matter about excuses. The Orlando game, where they're down their top 3 centers on the depth chart, and they run the Magic off the floor. It was their 3rd game in 4 days. They had all the excuses in the world to not show up, and they were fresh as a daisy. And you wouldn't have known about any excuses they could have leaned on, because this team, every single day, that's the focus. Let's maximize these 24 hours, and credit to them. They're doing it, and that will serve them well in the postseason.
100%. I think Joe Mazzulla has been great for this team, and I think he'll continue to be. Rest of the quick hitters, which are more quick hitters than this was quick. Malcolm Brogdon spoke about not feeling valued in Boston with a recent article, in a recent article written by Jason Quick of The Athletic. We talked about it on the last pod, basically saying, I'm glad to be in a place where I feel valued now. There were times last year I didn't feel valued. My response to this, Bobby, spoiler alert, was, yeah, of course you're not going to feel very valued. They traded you for Drew Holiday and upgraded. Like that is the natural feeling for you to have. So I don't blame him for saying that, but like it's business, man. Like, what are you going to do? Like, sorry, like it sucks.
Yeah, if I'm Brogdon, I can certainly understand why Brogdon is upset and he felt underappreciated and all of that. But also anyone looking at it objectively who's not directly affected by it, who's not Malcolm Brogdon, can say, you got injured, and an opportunity that they had to take became available. There was some friction there dating back to just the injury and the recovery. And when that Joe Mazzulla at the Jaylen Brown extension press conference afterwards, he said Derek White's our starting point guard. Brogdon was upset by that and thought it should be an open competition, even though he's at a stage in his career where he should be in a 6-man role, especially on a championship team that needs to pace and preserve him. So I think it's very understandable on the Celtics' part, and you get why Brogdon's upset. But if he can just kind of zoom out and take a macro view of it and be, less into his feelings, then it's like, yeah, like I got injured. They had a chance to upgrade. I get it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like it is what it is. Like that's kind of just what I was saying. Like, yeah, sorry, traded you, but like good for him, I guess. I don't know.
So
I'm glad he's in a place where he can
I'll
play.
ask you this.
Yeah.
Do the Celtics make that trade if Malcolm Brogdon never gets hurt?
Yeah, I think
it's still an upgrade. I just wonder, And Brad Stevens is bold. It's the same summer that he traded Marcus Smart. They probably do, especially knowing how much Stevens loves Drew Holiday.
Yes.
But I becomes a little more, there's more emotion involved if Brogdon never gets hurt. And if he never gets hurt, then it might be the difference in whether or not they had reached the championship.
Also true. My favorite hypothetical question to ask is always, do they still make the Drew Holiday trade if the Brogdon Clippers deal went through and he was the one traded for Kristaps? Do they trade Marcus and Rob for Drew instead of Malcolm? That's my favorite one because I think that's a lot harder.
It is a lot harder. That's a tough one because of the combination, but ultimately, if they already have Kristaps, I think that Brad probably does it.
You do you think he does it?
I do think he does it.
Interesting.
I
think he should as well, but it's like
it's a lot harder. But I just think
tough pill to swallow.
I mean, they know they've been one of the worst offenses in crunch time in recent postseasons, and so I think they look at that and say, it's all the reasons that they were willing to trade Marcus this summer, where we can't have him on the floor at end of games anymore. It's just too detrimental to our floor spacing. And we want Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown to take even more ownership of this team and to step up as leaders. And so I think they looked at it as we've reached a point where it's time to trade Marcus Smart.
I agree. I think it was time. Sorry, we're going to go off the rails for a brief second. Are you on TikTok at all? Do you go on TikTok?
I have too much of a Twitter addiction, so I stay off TikTok.
Do you know Jared McCain?
No, I've never heard that name.
I'll send you some TikToks after. Jared McCain is a guard. I think he's point guard at Duke, and he is sick. And he's like chronically on TikTok. He's TikTok famous now. And he did a cover of this song. Like he'll just go on there and like sing and mess around. And he sang this viral TikTok song. And now all of TikTok is just some people like editing his song, singing it into the actual song with like highlights of Jared McCain. It's my favorite thing right now. Like it is literally all I'm seeing. And my buddy just texted me that goes, "Are you on Jared McCain TikTok?" I go, "Yes, I'm on Jared McCain TikTok." All right. Anyway, sorry. Back on track. Celtics.
Now send that my way.
I absolutely will, but you're gonna be obsessed. Porzingis being the missing piece. Ramona Shelburne of ESPN put out an article literally this morning as we're recording this and as you're listening to this, where Jayson Tatum detailing how Kristaps is the missing piece. The highlight of it, I would argue, or the one the quote you mentioned to me, was Tatum comparing him to Pau Gasol effectively. Excuse me. He said Kobe really needed Pau for those last two championships that they won together. Tatum said, whatever path I'm on and we're on, KP really feels like the missing piece. We talked about it when we discussed him being missing in the Clippers game. Like, it really does feel like Kristaps is the glue that is bringing this team together and helping them push forward. And like, without him, it's just, you can see, and I said this before the season started, he completely changes the way they play offense. And it is so huge for this team.
Yeah, without a doubt. He is their Rob Gronkowski. And that's why they need him to be healthy in the playoffs to win a championship. With that said, and this was my game story from the Clippers loss, and really what I was locked in on, kind of had blinders when it comes to any other developments and things worth diving into from that matchup, because this is far and away the most important. Like Rob Gronkowski, when he's healthy, the success rate for the Patriots in the playoffs, pretty high. Without him, quite low. And so you can't bank on Kristaps Porzingis being healthy. We've gone through this season with a ton of minor injuries already to his lower body. And so I think that the offense without him, we did a whole show on this, in fact, that it needs to improve. And there are ways to do so, whether that's more cutting, whether that's getting Jayson Tatum more post-ups, all these different things. Drew Holiday, which is very important, I believe, he tends to step up as a scorer when another member of the starting five is out. And so that's what I look at is Kristaps Porzingis. We can praise him up and down for what he does for this team at both ends of the floor, by the way. But there is also the understanding that, like Gronk, you kind of hold your breath every night with him. And that's why I think that they need to really focus on sharpening their offense when he's not off the floor for a stretch, but an entire game.
Absolutely. Like, you have to be better with him off the floor, but at the same time, like, that just proves how much you need him for these playoffs, because as much as it may be frustrating to watch them play offense without him, that's because they're a completely different team when he's off the floor versus when he's on the floor. Even when he's in a game versus, out of the game, like, just him being out for a full 48 minutes is brutal for the Celtics offense. And not to mention how impactful he's been on defense. Like, he is averaging just under 2 blocks a game, I think, still. I don't know the exact number, but like, he's been a force down there. He's been playing a little bit of that free safety role, 1.8 blocks a game, which is his highest since 2019-20, when he was with Dallas, and he only played 57 games. Like, he's been huge for the Celtics team. You can't say enough about him. Last little quick hitter. Celtics rumored to be in on Jae'Sean Tate. It was in an article up from The Athletic from Kelly Iko, Shams Charania, and Sam Amick. Boston and Phoenix have shown interest in Jae'Sean Tate. We talked about this on the pod that went out this morning. Curious to know your thoughts, and then I can give mine. I'll let you rock first, though.
Very simple. It's not happening. I'd be stunned. And now I'm going to look like a buffoon. If
No,
it does,
agree.
But one, he doesn't fit into the Grant Williams TPE.
Bingo.
He's making $6.5 million. So 6.2 is obviously a smaller figure. And secondly, he's not a good 3-point shooter. So I've written about him as whether he would or would not make sense as a potential trade target in the past, but I didn't cover him this go around for the TPE because he doesn't fit into it. But even if he didn't, he's a career 30.5% 3-point shooter who's below that this season. It's on low volume. And so I get that he's someone that they can acquire on the cheap, but he doesn't make sense for those two reasons.
Couldn't agree more. We said the same thing. Doesn't shoot, undersized forward. You have already Sam Hauser and O'Shea Brissett. He's effectively a worse O'Shea Brissett at this point. Like, he's fine. He's a good player. It just doesn't make sense for the Celtics, especially when you have to gut your bench to do it.
Can I flip it back on you?
Please.
Would you rather see the Celtics acquire, if they were to make a move, Torrey Craig or John Konchar?
I like Torrey Craig better as a player. I like John Konchar more as a trade piece because he makes $6 million and you can trade him past the season. So that's what I will go for. That'll be my answer. So if Torrey Craig actually is in the rotation, which I don't think he would be, Torrey Craig I like better as a fit because I think he's a better shooter. I think he's a better, veteran presence. But I like John Konchar more for the Celtics because you can then flip him next year when you'll be more restricted by the salary. What's your answer? I'm curious now.
Well, so I totally agree in how you divided those up. And then I also look at it and say, Torrey Craig is great for a rental piece in the event of injury as an insurance policy. But if there's not, then he's mostly just riding the bench come the playoffs.
Exactly.
And so I think there's more value in trading for Konchar.
100%. 100%. Now, just to double back here, Bobby, I need to. This is Jared McCain TikTok.
Here we go.
It's been in my head, so you can hear it, right?
Yep.
I'm 2 days into college and I'm 3 lectures behind.
I didn't expect this to be his voice.
Him calling. He said he wants to be mine, but it doesn't really sit with me quite right because he doesn't really like the things that I like.
And I keep accidentally locking myself out of my dorm in the middle of the night. I wake up kind of wired and I wake up kind of cold and I wake up kind of tired, but I'll just
Does he do any Noah Khan?
See, I don't like
What'd you
breaking
say?
rules.
Does he do any Noah Khan?
I wish. That'd be electric. I love Noah. Oh, that'd be fire.
They beat UNC,
but
belt it out.
Those edits are like my entire TikTok. Like, I'm scrolling, same thing, edit. And the best part is Bleacher Report's latest mock draft has the Celtics taking him at the end of the first
that'd
round.
be electric.
Bobby,
what we need,
take him. Oh,
does the audience know about your vocal capabilities?
Yeah, I've talked about it before. They know I sang in high school and stuff. Yeah.
What we need if they draft McCain is a duet.
If we can make it happen, we can make it happen. That'd be fire.
We can
Jared
go, the montage can go from him playing basketball to you different podcast clips.
That'd be amazing. I want to interview Jared McCain. He's awesome, dude. The way he carries himself is so sick. I think he's dope. So I'm hoping I can get him. Like, yeah, all of the comments on this is all I'm looking at right now. He really put the whole app onto this song. He's sick. Anyways, we can't do trivia today because Sam isn't here. However, in lieu of that, All-Star reserves are coming out today. Are you
Ooh.
interested in filling out our own ballots right now? Thoughts?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Amazing. Glad you're on board. Let me pull up the Google Sheets so we can do it on there. We'll do it for both conferences. We don't have to spend a ton of time on it, but I figured since there is no trivia, we can make up for it with this. So let me throw this here.
While you get this together, I was floored listening to Tim Legler, one of the best analysts in the game, say that when he was giving his all-star reserves, he included who else he had consideration for that didn't ultimately make it for him. And under honorable mention, did not include Derek White.
Yeah, that's rude.
That's wild to me.
That's disrespectful.
And again, one of the best analysts, but didn't even include him in honorable mention.
Disrespect. Not a fan of that. He's banned from the channel.
You're never coming on these pods.
well, actually, no, you can come if you want. You can come hang out. We can get Tim Legler. Tim Legler's
to talk it out.
Exactly. All right. I've got this up. Obviously, you need 2 guards, 3 forwards, and then 2 wild card spots. Include Julius Randle if you'd like him on the team, and then you can move him to the bench you can include a replacement for him if you'd like to have him, if he would have been on your first team, and then you can discuss who the replacement would be. However, that said, Bobby, I'll let you rock first. We'll start in the East because that's where the Celtics are. Who's your first all-star? Who are your guards? Give me your guards.
Okay, so someone who should be starting in the game that is going to make it is Jalen Brunson.
Yep.
He's on. I think Donovan Mitchell deserves a ton of credit and really hasn't gotten attention for what he's done in Cleveland, keeping them afloat. And now they have Garland back and they're ready to rock here. But that team could have easily cratered. I think people expected it. I think there were some who weren't sure, would he be on the Cavaliers beyond the trade deadline? But here they are, 4th in the Eastern Conference. So Donovan Mitchell in the backcourt as well. I look at Tyrese Maxey as a deserving all-star and someone who should get in. And then I look at the Miami Heat. Or do you want me to stop there and just do the guards?
It's up to you. You only get 2 guards, though, so Tyrese Maxey goes under the wild card for you. That said, I mean, we can keep rolling, though, because spoiler alert, all 3 of those guys are also on my all-star team. They have to be. Donovan Mitchell, like you said, deserves a ton of credit. Tyrese Maxey is absolutely an all-star, and Jalen Brunson should have been starting this game. So I agree with you. I wrote Halliburton, but you can keep rocking because I agree on all fronts.
Excellent. And so then looking at the front court, I think Miami only deserves 1 all-star, and I think it should be Bam Adebayo. I don't think it's really – I agree. I don't think there's a ton of room for debate there. I mean, Jimmy Butler takes the regular season off, and so
he's been good.
Think he should get to go to the all-star game for that. Yeah. Bam has been awesome. I think he deserves it. This is where it starts to get very interesting, but ultimately I look up and down at these – next potential options, and I put Jaylen Brown in, and I put Paolo Banchero in.
I agree with you. And for what it's worth, I think I would have those 2 even if Julius Randle was healthy. And that's not a slight at Julius Randle, but I just think the East is so good this year that the Knicks you only get 1. I'm sorry. You only get 1. Only the best teams can have multiple all-stars. And for what it's worth, I don't even know if the Bucks deserve to have 2 all-stars, but Dame was starting, so he gets in. The Sixers get it because they're so top heavy. And I don't know. I'm just Julius Randle's always been such a hotly contested subject on this podcast. I don't know. I think Paolo deserves it a bit more, though you can make an easy argument. And Julius Randle's hurt anyway, so he's not going to get it. But I think this last spot is where you get super interesting. I think Paolo is a question mark in some people's minds now, as is Jaylen Brown. Paolo, because the Magic have really fallen off a cliff in this second half of the first half of the season, as backwards as it sounds. But I agree with all the all-stars you mentioned. Who is your last one? Because like I said, I think this is where things get a bit interesting.
This is where it gets really interesting. And there are so many names to consider. Tim Legler, I'll bring him up again. He even mentioned Jared Allen as someone he had under consideration. And I look at it and I mean, it's so tough because really, I think it boils down to 3 individuals. And 2 of them happen to be on the team that we cover, Porzingis and Derek White. And the third is Trae Young. And when it comes to popularity, and I know this is not decided by the fan vote, but it's obvious that it would go to Trae Young, even though Porzingis has a nation behind him, still the case. And when it comes to who deserves it most, I think, we talked about what Kristaps Porzingis means to this Celtics team. And then you look at the metrics and they tell you the answer is Derek White, and it's dumb to consider either of the alternatives. But I ultimately reward Trae Young for being the focal point of his offense and the number one option and the best player on his team, and what that means from a night in, night out responsibility standpoint. They're not having the best of seasons. They're well below 500 at 20 and 27, 10th in the Eastern Conference, so barely in the play-in tournament. Nonetheless, I think that his impact as a facilitator and a scorer is good enough that I'd feel comfortable giving him the nod.
Okay. I respect that as somebody who has had to come on here and defend Trae Young for being an actually good player from Sam, who doesn't think so. I can respect that you gave Trae Young that nod. However, I got to go Derek White. The Hawks are 7 games below 500. I can't in good faith give him that nod. I do agree with you that the next two up could be Trae Young. Or I know you had Derek White and Kristaps Porzingis as your next two up. I would agree. I think Trae Young and Kristaps Porzingis would be up there. I also think Scotty Barnes deserves a shout. He's been great, but they're just not good enough. Same with Mikal Bridges. One guy who I want to credit, who has gotten 0 All-Star buzz this year, and I think deserves far, far more for where his team is in the standings. They are currently better than the Hawks, 2 games better than the Hawks, 2.5 games behind the Magic. Kobe White has been so unbelievably good for that Bulls. Absolutely. Like, you look at DeRozan, and right, DeRozan is the guy who would get All-Star buzz, for the Bulls, right? He's averaging 22, 4, and 5.3. Kobe White's averaging 19, 4.7, 5.1. Very similar stats. He's shooting 46% from the field and 39% from 3 on 7.1 attempts a game. He is shooting the most threes on the Bulls at the best percentage outside of Alex Caruso and Patrick Williams, both of whom take less than 5. Like, his ability to keep this team afloat with Zach LaVine out. Like, DeRozan's been good, yes, but like Kobe White has been close to their best player on a night-to-night basis, and they have been so good with the Kobe White DeMar DeRozan tandem. I absolutely think he should get All-Star buzz. He's not going to get it. He's not going to get on the team, but he should be in this group of Derek White, Kristaps Porzingis, Trae Young, like Scotty Barnes. Like, he should be in the next up category. Like, the impact he's had on this Bulls team, I think he's a most improved player candidate. And I think in a year, if there were more injuries, I think he would be getting some consideration for the next up spot. He's been amazing for that Bulls team.
So I agree with you when it comes to what Kobe White means to the Chicago Bulls, when it comes to the growth he's made and his most improved player of the year consideration. I would put him on a tier below the names we just talked about for all-star consideration.
Sure. Yeah. I excuse me, I had hiccups. I can back that. He hasn't gotten anything. I haven't seen any. He hasn't even been a name mentioned. And
you would, to your point, like to see it be used as an opportunity to shout him out.
Exactly. And Jared Allen too, like you mentioned. He's been so good over the past few months for them, or past few weeks, I should say. Anyways, thank you for indulging me in that activity. I thought it'd be fun. We're going to learn the All-Star reserves tonight, I believe. So excited for that. Excited for Shams to spoil it, even though ESPN or TNT is going to put it out. But anyways, any final thoughts before we get on out of here?
No, I think we pretty much covered it all, and we'll see how our predictions fare.
All right. Well, I've got to do the outro because Sam's not here. Let's see if I can match him. Thank you all for tuning in. We appreciate you guys for listening. Make sure to subscribe to How About Them Celtics. Check out all of Bobby's work at si.com/Celtics, inside the Celtics over there. Leave us 5 stars on Apple and Spotify. Subscribe on YouTube. You can follow me on Twitter at JackSimoneNBA. You can follow Sam at Sam LaFrance NBA, even though he's not here. And you can follow Bobby at Bobby Kravitsky on Twitter. That's it for us.
Taco, come on. Taco.